All right. Well, we have a special return guest here. It was almost a year ago that we last had you on as our first Zoom video guest that I ever did. And now Zoom is like second nature here. But here we go. We're going to talk to Cowboy Mach Bell here with his talk about his new great book. I mean, this guy's writing books faster than we can read them. It's unbelievable. You got a third trilogy heading our way soon, or what?
After this interview, I'm taking notes right here for my next book.
Okay.
You're going to be the star of it, Joe.
All right. Well, tell us, last year we talked to you and we were talking about the diary. Once a rocker, always a rocker, which, really set the stage basically for this book. Is that how you initially set the whole plan up, or
My
how did this, tell me all the goodies.
plan.
Yeah, tell me about your plan.
There was, there's no plan whatsoever. I never. The whole writing thing is wacky. I was talking to a podcaster a couple years ago, and Michael Butler on the Rock and Roll Geek Show, and he said, "Cowboy, I like the stories. Why don't you release the diary that you kept with these guys, the Joe Perry Project? Why don't you release that?" So I released the Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker book. It's just the diary of my whole time. The thing with the diary was it was structured almost like a movie or like a proper book should be. It just naturally was that way. The setup of having a world famous rock star kind of down on his heels trying to put together a new band, and this guy Cowboy Mach, who's nobody's ever heard of, gets a call from Joe's manager saying, "Hey, we want you to be the singer of the band." And I come out of nowhere, and then the traveling, and then there was build-ups and then huge letdowns when Joe would fall down on stage, or I would have a problem or whatever, and it was up and down and up and down, and it just made for a perfect little book. Anyway, it came out. um, Michael said do it, so I did. It took about 9 months to turn the diary into a published book. Um, book came out and found an audience, and I was pretty psyched, and started toying with the idea of writing a follow-up. A lot trickier than I was competing with myself. I really liked the way the first book just had this very natural flow to it, and the whole way that it ended up being in the reader's hands was it was a fluke. Now I was actually having to think, okay, can I tell a story? And I wanted to tell a story. I wanted to tell a story about not so much about me, but about rock and hard rock in particular. From my viewpoint as a kid growing up in New England, watching some of these early hard rock guys come through my town: Jimi Hendrix, uh, Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, um, through coming through Boston, and also through. I'm in the suburbs, or was at that point, out in Framingham, and Jimi Hendrix was coming to the little tent that we had in town, and Jimmy Page brought his new band Led Zeppelin to try to get it together in this little tent. I wanted to talk about the shows, about that wonderful time
Mhm.
when a kid could go to a show for a couple of bucks, or in the case of like Led Zeppelin, I got, come on, kid, they needed people in the tent because the band hadn't filled the tent themselves. They were a brand new band with one record out, and people really didn't know what Led Zeppelin was. It was advertised as the Led Zeppelin. The Led Zeppelin was the sign on the posters on the. I wanted to talk about those times. I wanted to talk about my dreams. I wanted to talk about putting together bands with my friends and what it was like back in the late 60s, early 70s. There was a period there where local bands could get together, and there was so much work out there all of a sudden. Thank you, John, Paul, Ringo. I mean, it was still, I believe that the bomb set off by Beatlemania kind of grew and grew, and teen centers and dancing and going out and listening to a band just became what American youth wanted to do in the trail of the Beatles. And then by the time my colleagues the 13, 14-year olds from the early 60s became almost 20, suddenly there was all these clubs where we could go and rock 5 days, 6 days a week, rock on these little stages, get our act together, usually playing cover songs. But in the case of my band, Thunder Train, we were working on original material. Uh, we'd have to sometimes sneak it in. We'd, play the new whatever uh, long cool woman with a black dress hit, and then sneak in our own Cindy is a Sleeper right behind it, and while the dance floor was still grooving. I wanted to talk about those days. I wanted to talk about the little cabins and shacks that the bands would all stay in. That the club owners were paying us such a small amount to play for a whole week. We'd go on at 9, play till 2 a.m. every night, 5, 6 sets, and then it was back to the hen house out back,
Oh,
where
jeez.
they would put us in these bunks. And my band Thunder Train went from that scene into this amazing mid 70s scene that was cooking in New York and Boston. And I wanted to talk about that. Um, a real scene, not developed from the top up, where a company says, "Oh, San Francisco did great with Moby Grape and Jefferson Airplane. We want to do the same thing in Boston. We're going to have a Bosstown sound and hire a bunch of Boston bands and sell that to America." That actually happened in the late 60s. They called it the Bosstown sound. It was this huge hype. The bands were good. Eden's Children, uh, the Beacon Street Union, Ultimate Spinach. Um, they were they were as valid as what we were getting from the San Francisco, but it didn't coalesce in a true scene. And that's what happened at CBGB's and the Rat in Boston in 76 and 77. A true scene came together from the grassroots, fanzine writers, local college radio people, the bands, of course, the followers of the bands, even more important, the club owners who understood it, especially Jimmy Harold here in Boston at the Rat, who not only booked the bands and booked the bands that played the original music, but also put up the money to release Live at the Rat. Live at the Rat was 10 of the top bands out of the underground scene, all playing together on a two album set. This was the same thing happened with Hilly Crystal in New York with CBGB's. They released Live at CBGB's.
Mm.
Anyway, it was out of all that scene that I kind of got my name out there and got to a point where the manager of Joe Perry would call me a couple years after that to end up being in the Joe Perry project, which I wanted to write about that because here I'd been very much identified with the underground scene with bands like Suicide and the Flesh Tones and the Dead Boys. And now I'm switching over to a much more national classic rock, uh, bigger uh, kind of platform with the Joe Perry project. Um, Interesting how these different things, ask any musician and it all comes back in the end of the day. Hey man, I'm just a musician. I just play what I feel like playing, and I like to rock. In my case, I like to hard rock, and you can call it what you will. I've been called glitter rock. I've been called glam rock. I've been called classic rock. I've been called punk rock. Yeah, I'm always singing the same song though. I wanted to write about those things. And yeah, it's funny with these rock bands. I read all the rock books. That's the thing. Love this new Julian Gill book about Aerosmith on tour in the early 70s. But it doesn't even have to be an artist that I'm like all that big on, like a Graham Nash. I don't really listen to Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Hell, I'd even read a pop or an opera book or a country and western book because I don't necessarily want to listen to that music, but it's the story of the artist dealing with his public, dealing with transportation, dealing with where you're going to spend the night. How do I move up? You don't need, Joe, I got to say,
Mhm.
my music you know, I do these rock and roll albums like Thunder Train or Joe Perry Project. Some people like them, some people don't. But it's me in particular. I don't know about that singer, but people like my books. Almost everybody seems to like the books. I don't know. I think people are reading the books that have never even heard my music. They just say, I like the Cowboys books. I like the stories. And it, it's a funny thing that I'm kind of discovering. I mean, it's because of the rock that gives me the authority to be able to, or authenticity to be able to write a book and maybe
Hmm.
attract people to read it. But then um, it's not, once you get into the book, once you read that first page, you don't really have to listen to me sing through the whole thing. It's an adventure. Um, and that's what I find with a lot of my,
Hmm.
sometimes I get a cool book, I mean, a book by somebody I really want to read, a hard rock artist. And then I read it and geez, he doesn't really remember that much about what happened. And he doesn't really tell the stories I was hoping for. It's more about, his, problems in his life or whatever medical situation. And then on the other hand, I'll read some book by, some pop singer girl that I would never listen to, but I read her book and I'm like, she's got cool stories and I like how she built herself up. And so, that I wanted to write a second book and actually produce a book from the beginning and end and not rely on a diary that somehow just ended up with such a good structure. This new book has not, I don't know about the structure. And I'll tell you something, Joe.
Hmm.
I did spit it out. Like you said, you didn't even know I was writing one. I didn't even really know I was writing it because I didn't want to admit it to myself that, oh no, I'm going to do it again. Because here we are. This is world headquarters. This is where I write these things. I sit in this little room. I mean, I missed all of last summer, except the Aerosmith History Days event. I went up to Sunapee to just get a breath of air and get out of this room for a minute. But this one, I said, I'm going to write it. I'm going to give myself a deadline. Because if you don't give yourself a deadline, whether you're writing a book or doing a podcast or doing an album, you might never come to the end because I don't know, maybe in a podcast, it's a little easier because you got the beginning and the end, you might edit. But, a book or a record, it's never done. You can edit forever until you die. So anyway, I was saying, I'm going to get this book done in a 6-month window. So I did that. And what that meant was once I wrote it, we published it. And I didn't even go back and really read it again. And right now I'm in that space that artists give themselves, like after they paint a picture that they've been staring at for months and months, or after they record an album they've been listening to in the cans for months and months. They need space, they
Oh, yeah.
release it, then they say, I'm not going to listen to the record, give me at least 6 months or give me a year before I even go back and listen to it. Same thing with a book, because you get, it's all rewrite, and finally I just said, that's it, no more rewrites. Release. And now I'm in that beautiful spot where I haven't really looked at it for a while. I'm looking forward to going back and what I wrote that. Well, that was the other thing. If you don't cut it off and say just release, then you go back and you read and say, oh, I didn't really want to reveal that about myself, or oh, I shouldn't say that about him, he might get mad. Just do it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's got the way you got to do it. But I bet you, obviously by writing these two books, I'm sure you've gotten a lot of more people interested in Thunder Train and trying to obtain Thunder Train music out there. It's probably really hard to find what's left of it.
Yeah, yeah, the right, it's hard. What you'll find on the internet pretty much is what there is as it's available right now. That there's the original Teenage Suicide album that I think is only in like MP3s. You can get it electronically, but you can't. Although I don't know, there's like Italian versions of this same album. There, the Rat album you can still get on CD, and And then I don't know where it is. This thing. This was a good live album that Thunder Train did in Thunder Train Hell Tonight. I
Mm.
Amazon's selling a really crappy version of it that doesn't have all the cool packaging that came with the original. You buy it and it's just like a white sleeve with a blank CD in it. So,
Oh,
but
geez.
if you happen to run into me at the bar, though, I will. I got like a few of these left, so talk to Cowboy, or yeah, or contact me. But yeah, I know. Uh, it's one of those things where there's interest. Every day I get interest, but there's not enough interest to really put the money behind releasing the best of Thunder Train or doing that whole thing, or maybe there is, but I don't have the time to do it right now. Look at me, Joe, writing books, going out doing book signings, going to the history days. I'm trying to
Doing
keep
interviews.
my wood stove going. I just yeah, interviews with the rock show critique. Exactly. Yeah. But
Yeah,
I'm still young, so all this stuff might happen down the road, but give it time.
one step at a time, right? All right. Well, you've obviously, we don't want to spoil a lot out of the book. There's like a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of people mentioned that you came across during your time, like people when they were in younger bands before they became on and got famous. All kinds of great stories and tales and all this good stuff. I mean, and like you said, you weren't afraid to let people know some of the things that happened to you on your journey through this whole matter. Like, you kept the diary about the circus. You also, there's a couple other instances in there that, you didn't have to share, but you did, and kind of let everybody know how things were with you and everything. So it's definitely a very interesting read. It took me a while to get through it only because I've been so busy and I've I've been trying to read 5 books at once, but I eventually said, all right, I'm going to sit down and just read this one first. And it worked out like a charm because I knocked it off pretty quickly. And I got to say, I'm definitely glad that I did. It's a really, really great book. It definitely tells you about that time in the music scene, and what big better city to do it in than like the Boston, and then you got some New York City stuff in there too. That's just great.
I tried to, my friend Debbie is a rock fan, and she likes to like travel around the world and go to the address where Led Zeppelin did an album cover or recorded a record or whatever. And I like that stuff too. I like to go to where movies were made, to the original. So when I wrote this book, I'm very aware of that, and I anywhere I could, I always put the address of where things happen afterwards. I'm very date oriented and address, uh, and I tried to give a little background on things you read about a lot, like the Mercer Arts Center in New York or Max's Kansas City, or what have you. And I tried to bring you inside the place a little bit, give you a little bit of the history, and talk about it, as well as how I uh, connect to these places. But so, and as you read it too, you saw I'm always talking about the different records that are dropping from the heavens as we go along.
Well, yeah.
New or the new Rolling Stones record or the new Slade record or T Rex, as it happens as we're moving, to try to keep it in the timeline. I think it also draws the reader in because they also remember when Schools Out was released or whatever, and it puts them in that place. Think, oh, okay, that's what Cowboy was doing when I was listening to that. Um, yeah, I try to pull a lot of different things in, so it's kind of part reference book, part, definitely if you're into Aerosmith and Joe Perry, their story is tied into mine too. And my
Hmm.
band Thunder Train came up in this area right after Aerosmith got cherry picked out of the area and was becoming huge. And agents were grabbing my band and kind of selling us to the same rooms that they had sold Aerosmith to just previously. So um, I, from the very beginning, I had connections with those guys, and then it got tighter and tighter until finally I was out there singing with Joe, getting to know Stephen and Brad, all that stuff.
Yeah. All right, so now you've played a lot of places, obviously, going through all the different venues. I don't know, there's probably like over 50 of them at least that you mentioned in the book alone. What would you say your top three venues, looking back on your whole thing, that would you be most to say, hey, those are the ones that I just am glad I got a chance to play them, you know, or your
Wow,
top three or whatever.
wow. Loved Harpo's in Detroit. That
Ah,
was a great old theater, movie theater turned into a rock hall. One of those good sized places. I don't know,
huge.
800,000. Not not too huge. The right size for a really it's where you'd want to see Keith Richards. It's just a good sized place. We played there 3 or 4 times with the Joe Perry Project. Loved playing there. Um, that was in Detroit, and those kids and the town brought so much to it. The Rat in Boston was just, especially in '77, it was it was a prize package in the middle of the Cracker Jack box every night when you went in there. You didn't know who rock stars, the press, up on stage. One night it's Talking Heads, the next night it's Lita Ford, the next night it's the Ramones, um, and my band was playing with all those bands when we weren't headlining there ourselves. Very exciting time. Great, great room for rock and roll. And so so there's a tiny place, the Rat. There's a medium-sized place, and for a big place, I like the medium and small places. I was going to say, I mean, Pocono Speedway was fantastic just because it was big and there was thousands of people out there and we are playing with a Cheap Trick and Joan Jett. But, or Caracas, Poliedro, 20,000, we were headlining. But my third, Harpo's, the Rat, um, if we'd ever played the Whiskey a Go Go, that probably would have been it. But just because of but yeah, L.A. playing the I was just I love California, but I'm going Huntington Beach, the Golden Bear. I'm going there. Another small room, 500. We played there. Tim Bogert from uh, Vanilla Fudge opening up
Hmm.
for us, and Beck Bogert Appice. Um, yeah, the Golden Bear, Huntington Beach, right on the pier. We played there with the Project. The Rat with Thunder Train. I played there with the Project too. The Rat with Thunder Train. Detroit with the JPP, and Golden Bear. There you go, Joe. Took me a while. I spat them out.
I had a feeling you were going to mention the rat. I just could tell by it from the book and everything. How could you not, right?
It's funny, man, because it's right there, but in my own backyard. But it's it. I people, it's size does not equate with the whether size doesn't matter. It's
Mhm.
the big for me anyway. I got to play some big arenas and sports facilities, but they don't resonate with me like these medium size, like the Harpos. Love those ones.
Yeah,
See that Harpo?
that Harpo stage is like humongous. It's so high.
Yeah,
It gives it a unique thing there. I've only been there once, but that's cool that that place is actually still open. You go back and try to research all these places you've ever played. None of them are around anymore.
none of the other two that I mentioned certainly aren't around. And yeah, that's incredible that Harpo's is still going. Good on them. And uh, we need more of those. That was another thing though in the book that I like talking about, and I got a rock. Those were the times when you and me and our friend could all scrape together. If we could all come up with $500, we could become promoters and let's hire the JPP. And where are we going to put them? I don't know. Is my backyard big enough? Oh, Freddie's got what? It was almost like some of the, we worked for a lot of big promoters, but sometimes on those in between dates, it was like, who knows who these promoters would just be able to buy us because we were out in the sticks in between gigs, and it beats a blank. And those were amazing times, and those were the playing in the goat sheds and behind the barn and those things. We played those gigs too. I love that stuff.
Now, the title, I Gotta Rock. How was it easy to come up with the title, or did it take you a little while to settle on it?
I'll tell you the secret on I Gotta Rock. I did a song, I sang I Gotta Rock with Thunder Train. It's on the Live at the Rad album. I Gotta Rock. From the minute it came out, even when it was playing on the radio, people would say, I love your song, I Wanna Rock. And people would always say, hey, here comes Mach, I Wanna Rock Bell, I Wanna Rock. And I'd be going, I'm glad you heard the song, but it's actually I Gotta Rock. Didn't, it didn't help that the typesetter called it I've got to rock,
Hmm.
made it grammatically. Anyway, so when I did the book, I said, okay, what am I going to call this book? And I thought, okay, the first book I called Once a Rocker, Always a Rock, or a diary. And that's cool because that's based on a song that I wrote with Joe. How about I Gotta Rock, a song that I wrote with Steven Silva, the lead player of Thunder Train? That sounds good. And I like the name. And of course, not only were people immediately hearing I Want to Rock, I guess we called it the wrong thing because, and then 10 years later, Twisted Sister comes out with a huge hit called I Want to Rock, which even more made people think that Mach Bell was the I Want to Rock guy. Because I'm always like the guy that did it first. You know, we had Hot for Teacher in 76. We had I Gotta Rock. Everybody thought it was I Want to Rock in 77. Um, anyway, so that's it, Joe. I just wanted to try to connect I Gotta Rock with me and hope that people, after they read the book, don't say, oh, I just read this cool book. You should check it out. It's by Cowboy Mach Bell. It's called I Wanna Rock.
That's
No,
all you need, right?
no.
I mean, the title actually fits everything perfectly, so I didn't know how you went about, deciding on it. So I was just curious, that's all. So yeah, yeah, it fits perfectly.
It was what I had to do. I got to rock.
Yeah.
I mean, I missed my sister's wedding so I could play a gig in New York at CBGB's because I got to rock, man. I'm sorry, sis.
I'm gonna put you on the spot even harder than I did now before. You've written a lot of songs, probably many that unfortunately have never even been recorded. I'm betting, but give me your three best songs that you feel, your three strongest or your three most personal songs to you that you wrote that you feel are your best or favorite.
Yeah.
Not in
Well,
any order or anything, just give me three.
right. Okay. Um, I did. Well, I'll put this one first because not too many people are familiar with it. I was in a band called Last Man Standing, and I did a song called "Still Dreaming" that is a little outside of my wheelhouse. It wasn't a super hard rocker. It was a little bit more introspective. "Still Dreaming" by Last Man Standing. Dave Zola wrote the music. I wrote the lyrics. That's a good one. Somebody wrote to me the other day and said, "Oh, dude, you should have done Cindy as a Sleeper with the Joe Perry project." Cindy as a Sleeper is like my earliest recorded thing with Thunder Train. It's garage rock, which it was perfect for the JPP because Joe loves that garage rock too. Um, so Cindy as a Sleeper, it, you know, I have connections to that. It's a weird little song, but it sticks with people. And yeah, and somewhat the project album probably should be. I mean, I don't know that I like that "Never Want to Stop" at the end of the Joe Perry project album. "Never Want to Stop." Yeah, yeah, it's the last song. So it's Cindy's. So "Still Dreaming." See if you can find that. I don't even have that record right here, but I bring it to my book signings sometimes. "Last Man Standing," "Still Dreaming." Cindy's a Sleeper. Never Want to Stop.
There's your next book title. Never want to stop.
Oh, Joe! All right, I guess I got to start right now. I got a title. Never Want to Stop. That's beautiful, man. Thank you.
So, Well, what's your plan for this year? I know you got some things lined up with signings and conventions. Give everybody the rundown on where we might see you this year.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm very excited that this has given me an excuse to see people again, and it's a mix of people that actually saw me perform with the Joe Perry, Thunder Train, Last Man, whatever, and then lots of people that never saw any of that but are fans of the book, um, which is bizarre to have people come see me because I'm an author. Um, Gary Summers, the local P.T. Barnum, amazing showman of New England, runs the Northeast Comic Con, and he was nice enough to invite me to do a book signing at a Comic Con. Most of my book, I don't really hang out with authors, but I do like I'm on this little group online, and they all do book signings at bookstores, and they say, "Why are you going to a Comic Con to do a book signing?" But for me, that's where I like to do a book sign at Comic Con. I'm going to Northeast Comic Con March 11th through 13th. It's in Boxborough, Massachusetts. Um, yeah, I do sign a few books, and I spend a lot of time just talking to people and remembering the good times, or telling more stories or listening to stories that people have. Um, yeah, and I think I'll have more shows like that coming up. I'd love to. One thing everybody wants me to come to their part of the country. The one thing I didn't figure out, Joe, is carrying these books around is like I see Eddie Munster. He leaves with his 8x10s under his arm. Says, "I'm heading for Kansas. I'm like, see you later, Eddie." And then I'm here with my books, and especially this latest one's as big as a phone book. They're heavy. So I'm still trying to figure out how to get my tour bus to carry all this stuff all over. My friend Debbie from Detroit helped me load out last time, so hopefully Debbie will team up with me and we can bring this thing on the road.
Yeah, it'd be cool if you could like maybe plan on trying to do something where maybe hit a few of the major cities for do some kind of event maybe where you can also do like maybe some kind of an acoustic set or something.
Exactly. I did do my first acoustic, like elect. I played acoustic, but I was rocking. I was doing "Walk with Me, Sally" and "Black Velvet Pants." We were playing at a pub in Cambridge, and that was a gas. And I hope to do more of that. Yeah, you're right. Um, I've got some things coming up that will, I think, be involved in that. Oncearocker.com. Oncearocker.com is my website. Now I'll keep people up to date. And if you fill in the little box halfway down the page with your email address, I also send out things uh, warning people that I'm in the area, heading for your area. And you can either run for it or come join me.
Yeah, you do a great job at keeping up on the website as well as Facebook. You're always giving people some great posts on Facebook there too. So definitely make sure you follow Cowboy Mach Bell here on Facebook and anywhere else on his website.
Thank you, Joe.
And then you can also tell them about how you'll actually sign a personalized copy for them if they want you to mail one out to them.
That is correct. I do it right here on this very desk. I will sign you a copy of. I'm looking for mine. Yeah, you'll get a book. You'll get the official bookmark inside the book, and I will sign it right in here. I will say something funny to you and send it to you. And or I don't know if it'll be funny, but I'll send something rock. I'll write something rocking to you, and I'll send you a book. And look the size of it. See, I told you these things are
Oh yeah.
pictures.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
took a while to read, but it was definitely a read. I really like your book and can't recommend it enough. It's definitely anybody who likes mentioning, kind of want to take a moment back in time when rock was rock before, a lot of stuff really changed in the industry as far as, with everything with music. I mean, it's a whole different ball and wax out there now compared to what it once was. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's important to record that history. I know there's a lot of people recording it, but like I said earlier, a lot of those books are by rock superstars that uh, they're focusing their books. It's on more on their great hits and all the whining and dining and orgies and amazing things they did. I didn't get to do any of that. All I did was write a lot of songs and tour all over the place and stay in a lot of really beat up hen houses and motel rooms, and that's what I write about. I think it's valid, and I think it should be out there and preserved. So that's what I do, and I really appreciate everybody that gives it a chance. Like I know it takes a while to read them, Joe, but I try to write them like the New England weather. It changes. Like they say, if you don't like the New England weather, wait a minute, and it'll change. That's the way my books are. If you don't like the paragraph you're reading, just go to the next paragraph. It's a whole different story, and it goes keeps on taking off in new directions. Um, you could read it like a bathroom book and just read a page here or there, and did everything.
All right. Well, I definitely appreciate your time today on everything here, and good luck on everything with this book. And and for people who don't have his initial diary, the once a rocker, always a rocker, that's another one. And I guess for people who weren't sure on, I guess there's a method, a certain way that you can read it to kind of keep the timeline going. You had posted one day on one of your Facebook posts about somebody asked what was the best way to recommend to start
Oh yeah,
reading.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Uh, yeah, people wanted to know somebody wanted to read I Got a Rock, but said, "Oh, I haven't read the first one first." And yeah, they're both memoirs. The I Got a Rock is a 20-year memoir from 65 to 85, and the Joe Perry Project book, Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker, a diary, is a memoir of just 1982 to 84, the time I was in the project. Both books, the I Got a Rock has tons of stuff about Joe Perry Project and Aerosmith in it. And the other, not the little book, they're both big books. The diary has a lot about Thunder Train and the Rat and what happened before and after. So they intertwine, and the characters that are hinted at in the diary get fleshed out in I Got a Rock, and vice versa. I Got a Rock makes little mentions here and there that will elicit, oh yeah, I know what he's talking about, because cherry pancakes, I know that from the other book. So they work together. Like I tried to make it like a Harry Potter. They work together, but they also stand apart. I don't think there's one that has to be read before the other.
Right.
Neither of them starts with "I was born in a log cabin" or any of that. They start, you're in the rock from the beginning. I'm not here to bore anybody.
I definitely didn't do that with me, that's for sure. There's a lot of great stuff in these books here, and we definitely recommend them highly. Out of all the books that I've read, I would definitely say they are some of the best that I've ever read. Like you said, some people, then when they write books, they tend to go where you really wouldn't expect them to go. And some things like that, you want to get like your book, you get the meat and the potatoes. You get exactly what you would hope for in the book. You see, I got a rock. You're thinking, yeah, you're getting nothing but rock in here, pretty much.
Yeah, you're not getting "I got to go to rehab," which gets snuck into a lot of these. Oh boy, the whatever. Mick Jagger finally wrote a book, and then you get it, and it's like, well, what I'm really interested in is training dogs how to be help mates or whatever. What? Where did Mick? No, I'm sure Mick wouldn't do that to us. But sometimes, yeah, I agree, Joe. I read some of these books, and then there's a big chunk of the book, and suddenly it's not, and they're not rocking at all. They're in a bad place. But yep, thank you, man. Thank you for the high praise, and I really appreciate the work you do on your show. Uh,
Yeah, thank you.
this is what the scene is all about, man. What I was talking about earlier. This is the real scene when people like you do it, not for the royalty check or whatever, and just because you dig the rock and you and you know how to do this.
Yep. All right, Mark. Well, sounds good. Good luck with everything, and hopefully we'll talk to you down the road when we hear about your third book, the trilogy, eventually.
Never, never want to stop. Yeah, that's just a great show. All right, yay, oncearocker.com. See you guys.
All right.